Good morning, and welcome back to our weekly webcast on the weekly Parsha. This week we will learn the portion of Bechukosai, the last portion of the book of Leviticus, of Vayikra. The portion of Bechukosai begins, the first 10 to 15 verses begin with the promise that God makes to the Jewish people that if they fulfill the Torah and the Mitzvot properly, they will be rewarded with great things. The land will give its produce, the heavens will give its rain, and you will have successful crop, you will have peace in your land, there won't be any wars, etc. And then it goes on to say that if God forbid we don't, there will be ramifications as well. So I want to talk today about about the idea of reward for Torah and mitzvahs. So let's begin with calling your attention to the first verses of Bechukosai, of this portion, which you can find in your book on page 348. And I'll read just a couple of verses so you get the idea. It begins with the words, "If you will go in my statutes and observe my commandments and perform them, then I will provide you rains in their time, and the land will give its produce, and the tree of the field will give its fruit. Threshing will overtake vintage for you, and the vintage will last until the sowing. You will eat your bread to satiety, and you will dwell securely in your land. I will provide peace in the land, and you will lie down with none to frighten you. I will cause wild beasts to withdraw from the land, and the sword will not cross your land. I will pursue your enemies," and it goes on and on. So I want to, for a few moments, discuss this subject of the Torah's reward for adherence to Torah and mitzvahs, and also the rewards for our mitzvahs that we are promised in the world to come, when Mashiach comes. Over there too it talks about great reward, and I will quote to you, I will tell you what the sages tell us about the world to come. It's based on a verse in our portion where it says that the land will give its produce. So the rabbis tell us not like it is today. This is, in other words, it's also a reference to the time when Mashiach will come, that the land will give its produce then, but then it will be very different than today. Today, when you plant, even if you're blessed, it takes a whole season for it to grow. But in the world, when Mashiach comes, we're told that the land will give its produce immediately, the way it was in the first days of creation, before the sin of the tree of knowledge, when it was intended that the produce should give that the land should produce its produce immediately. You plant that day, the fruits grow and it's ready to be eaten. And not only that, the rabbis continue telling us that when Mashiach comes, the produce, not only will there be produce, fruit growing from trees, but the trees themselves will be edible. And also they say this is also similar to the way it was in the beginning of creation. And they prove this from the verses, that then the trees themselves, you could eat the bark. It tasted like the fruit.
Like how panda eat bamboo.
Yeah. And so on and so forth. It goes on to describe the great pleasures that will be that will be the inheritance of every person when Mashiach comes. So the question is, and we find in general in the works of our sages, when describing the time of the coming of Mashiach, it describes it in very physical terms. The lamb will lie with the sheep will lie with the lamb, and will be in one place it says that the earth will give out ready-made biscuit, cookies and sweets, things that you don't have to bake, you don't have to do anything, it'll produce to you immediately edible. But the question over here is, the obvious question is, the Rambam tells us at the end of his book, in the Mishnah Torah, at the end of his monumental work, he tells us that he describes also the time when the Mashiach will come. The last number of laws are the laws of Mashiach, and he describes a world, the world that will be then. And one of the things he says is that at that time there will be no wars, and there will be no worries, there will be no jealousy, and none of that. And the entire occupation of mankind will be Ladas es Hashem bilvad, to know the Lord, the Almighty, only to know the Lord. And that will be the entire occupation, to learn Torah and to learn it on higher levels and deeper levels, and that will have a profound knowledge and appreciation for Hashem. We'll get to know Him intimately. So the question, of course, is, if that is going to be the occupation of the entire world, in other words, we are describing a type of person. We will be elevated to a level that things of stuff will not mean anything to us. A person that is involved all day long, his entire heart's desire and occupation is learning and delving into the highest levels of knowledge. So this is a person that you have to tell him that there's going to be cookies growing from the ground. He cares about cookies, he cares about if the tree is going to be edible like the fruit. Why describe to such people, to an era that will produce that kind of human being, at the same time you're telling you're going to have a lot of candy? Candy is no longer the language of the human being. He's not interested in that. Tell him that he's going to have a profound understanding. That's a great reward. That, it's like even today, if you told a person that is on a higher level, an intellect, you tell a person like an Einstein that if you do good, you can get a lot of chocolate. You're talking to the wrong person, or the wrong language to the wrong person. That's not that thing that interests him. If we're all going to be on a level that the only occupation is knowing Hashem, why is good fruit that's going to grow immediately even talking to us? Why is that a language that is used? Tell us about the great reward, the spiritual perfection that we will reach in the time of Mashiach. Why are the rabbis so occupied telling us so much about physical reward, when it seems that the entire occupation will be one of spirituality, not physicality?
Is it because that's what they understand now when they're reading it, at the time of the reading?
Hold on. It's a good point. Now, obviously, there's a great, there is benefit in having no need to toil for your bread and to toil for your produce and so on. There's a great benefit in that. So tell us that that's a byproduct. But it seems that the rabbis are emphasizing that as a great reward and nothing about the spiritual reward. And this is an anomaly. It's a difficult thing to understand. Why so much emphasis on the physical reward when seemingly we will have very little interest in that? Now, this question can also be asked in our portion. What's our portion? Again, the Torah tells us if you will observe Torah and mitzvahs properly, you will receive great reward. What's the reward? That it'll be a lot of rain falling from heaven on time, and it'll give its produce. There'll be no wars, and you'll have delicious food, and you will not have any worry about parnasa and livelihood and so on and so forth. Not a word about the spiritual reward in the world to come. What is the reward for Torah and mitzvahs? Good food? Today? If you want to tell us that you're going to have a reward of good parnasa, fine. Tell us that. But why not say a little bit about the ultimate reward for Torah and Mitzvahs, which is a profound understanding in heaven and Gan Eden, paradise, and that will have appreciation for the Ziv HaShechina, the radiance of heaven. Where is that? Why is that not mentioned at all? It seems that the only reward is rain and food and quiet.
Not a word on Bina.
Not a word on the ultimate reward for Torah and Mitzvahs. Why is that missing from the picture? It's not at all there. Now, to be sure, there are commentators that tell us that indeed the verses over here in Bechukosai are not describing to us at all the ultimate reward. This is not reward at all. What this is meant to tell us is that God is so going to make, if you learn, if you'll show, if you learn Torah and you'll do mitzvahs properly, Hashem will make it possible for you and make it even more available to you to learn mitzvahs and to learn Torah and do mitzvahs properly by removing from you all things that may hinder and be obstacles for your study and total devotion to divine service. For example, a person that has to work a lot and worry about parnasa doesn't have the mind to learn. A person that's ill cannot do mitzvahs properly. A person that's worried about fighting wars is obviously going to be preoccupied with that. He won't be able to learn. So what the commentators tell us, these verses are not reward. This is just Hashem telling us, if you will learn and daven and perform mitzvahs properly, I'll make it even easier for you so that you can eventually receive even more reward. So this is not the reward. This is just God telling us, I'll remove all obstacles from you.
Because He knows people worry about these things
all
the time.
So He'll remove the obstacles. But that's not the reward. The reward for Torah mitzvahs is not mentioned over here.
The Rabbi says, I will walk among you, I will be a God to you, and you will be a people unto me. Isn't that the spiritual reward?
That's not the spiritual reward of the world to come. That is also over here, that you'll be inspired and you'll have the right ideas and you won't be confused with other, that's part of it.
It is a little bit of the foreshadowing of the Messianic age, though, where it's forecast that everyone will meet Hashem eye to eye and face to face. When He says here, I'm going to walk among you, that foreshadows a bit the state that we'll have in the Messianic age. I think it's parallel.
I don't know, possibly, but I don't, where is the verse?
Verse 12.
Verse 12. When it says, I'll walk among you, that's almost the same
Yeah.
thing. When it says you'll see Hashem eye to eye in the Isaiah prophecy.
Yeah, Rashi says that. It's a little reference to that is true. But but according to these commentators, this is not at all a description of the reward for Torah mitzvahs. This is just Hashem telling us that He will remove all obstacles, so you should be able to learn even better and perform even better, and that you should do it with the intention to serve Hashem, not to get reward.
A filter for white.
Rabbi, isn't the
What do you mean?
isn't the word "im" here
Please.
very different than used everywhere else in the Torah? The meaning of the word.
No, it says im means
Yeah.
if.
Okay, I read a sikha that
Could be has
that
different
there's
meanings as well.
no, that it means to really toil.
Oh yeah,
to-
that's true too. We'll see that soon. Yeah, I'll discuss that.
You know,
That's not im, that's Bechukosai.
Bechukosai.
something I'm just remembering, we had a discussion a short time ago, that you have in some way revised your thinking to now understand that work alone is its own reward, that it has its own purpose. We used
True.
to discuss that work was a necessary evil.
Right.
I still feel that way.
Yeah.
But you have revised your thinking in that area, and now you feel that work is a good thing, that it's something you should do regardless of whether or not you need to or not. That in and of itself is
You
its own
accomplish
reward.
something in this
Yeah.
way, you partner with Hashem in creation. So
Yeah.
we discussed that in the last JLI actually, that was part of it. But be that as it may, what the Torah over here is telling us that obstacles and worry and troubles He will remove from you.
Work will
Which
continue.
which doesn't mean you won't have to work. It means you'll plant,
okay.
but you'll be successsul.
Fine.
You'll have good parnos.
Okay, good.
Doesn't mean you're not going to, but if you have a difficult year, then you have to work extra hours, you have time, you have the mind, you don't have the time, you don't have the wherewithal for it. So He says that I'll remove from you. And
Good.
according to these commentators, not reward. However, there are commentators that say it is a reward. So according to those that feel that this is reward for Torah mitzvahs, why is only the physical reward mentioned, not the spiritual reward? Right?
Raises a good question.
Yeah. And then there's another question. Let's try to understand all this. I'll preface it by asking another question. We learned in the Pirkei Avos a few weeks ago, in the first chapter, there's a Mishnah that tells us that a person should serve Hashem not like a servant that serves to receive reward, but you should serve Hashem like a servant that does it for the sake of serving Hashem. You shouldn't be looking for reward at all. That's not the way you should serve Hashem. You think about it, I'm going to get rewarded, so I'll do the mitzvah. And if I don't, I'll get punished. That's not how you should serve Hashem. You serve Hashem because it's Hashem, because He wants it. Lishma, as it says, for the sake of Hashem. So why is the Torah even encouraging the idea of reward? It seems like it's contradicting us. In one place it tells us don't serve because of reward, but then it promises us all kinds of reward, making it exciting to serve because of reward.
But isn't the idea is that you start off doing it for reward and you get to a higher, like
okay,
not everybody can work on that level.
Yeah. Right. And the answer is exactly what you're saying. The reason the Torah tells us reward is the Torah is talking to all people. The Torah is addressing everyone, every single Jew. And not all Jews are at the level where they can serve Hashem with such pure altruistic intentions. Most people serve Hashem, at least in the beginning. When a child or simple people, you tell them if you do right, you'll get rewarded. If you don't, you'll get punished. That's the way you begin. You can't tell people that they're going to can't tell a 5-year-old serve Hashem altruistically. And this 5-year-old is in age, and then this 5-year-old's in mind. They could be 30, but they're still 5 in their education. Such a person also, you want to inspire him. Sometimes you need to give him a little bit of something, a push of something that will inspire him, because he's not at the level that the Rambam talks about, where his whole occupation is learning a Torah and Hashem, and he doesn't care about reward, and he's just interested in God because it's God. Not everyone's at that level, and the Torah addresses everyone. What we would call the lowest common denominator, right? So therefore the Torah tells us that we're talking about reward, and therefore for the same reason it doesn't talk about spiritual reward. Because you talk to someone who's a little more simple, you talk to them about Gan Eden and the radiance of the radiance of God's light, it doesn't really talk to him. Doesn't get it. It doesn't really, not really interested in that. I need something here now that I can feel, that I can relate on my own terms. So the Torah talks again to that level and says we'll give you good rain and good parnasa and no war and no worries and no illnesses and no nothing. So that's why the Torah first of all tells us about reward, and then it also tells us the type of reward, which is more at the lower level, so that everyone can relate to it. And the same thing with the coming of Mashiach, right? When the rabbis describe, we asked before, why is there so much emphasis on the reward at the time of the coming of when Mashiach comes? Talks about the reward that the fruits will be planted and grow immediately, and the bark will taste like fruit, and the tree itself will be a fruit. That's what we're going to be interested back in those days. We're going to be talking about God. We're not interested in fruit. And the answer is the same answer, because you think when Mashiach comes instantly, everyone's going to turn into a holy man. They're going to have immediately that appreciation for the highest levels of Gan Eden. It's going to take some time. So even then, we're told that to give them the push. Look what kind of great things will be then.
How much time does it say?
How much time will it be
for the transformation to happen?
Who knows? Maybe it's dependent on each person. But then we're left with another question. If we're going to talk and apply it to the lowest common denominator, then the people that are in a higher level are learning this, and this doesn't really talk to them. And they're out of the picture. It seems as if the Torah is talking to simple people, people that need a candy. What about those that don't need a candy? They're left out. What kind of a reward is this for someone that doesn't need all that? So you're talking to the lowest level, what's with the higher level? Mention something for them too. Talk to them about Gan Eden. So everyone has something in the picture, something to be told. Everyone can pick something out and be inspired. You're trying to inspire. Where are they? And the question is even greater. The question is even greater. Are we really talking in this verse to the lowest common denominator? And the answer is we're not. And how do I know this? Because Rashi tells us. And you mentioned it before, Richie. That when it says in Bechukosai G-d, if you will walk in my statutes, and the next verse says, the next words are, and observe my commandments. So it starts, it seems like a redundancy here, right? You walk in my statutes, and you will go in my statutes and observe my commands. The same thing. Why the double expression? So Rashi tells, he jumps at this right away, and he explains that in the first case, when it says you will walk in my statutes, it's not talking about the observance of mitzvahs. It's talking about the toil of Torah. That you will toil in the studying of Torah. And even and the rabbis explained to us, why is this the case of the description of our devotion to Torah and our toiling in Torah described in with the word Bechukosai? What does Bechukosai mean?
By law.
Decrees. More decrees rather than commandments.
Yeah.
So, a little difference there.
So the answer is that what Bechukosai is, the reason the Torah uses the word Bechukosai is because it's talking about the type of learning Torah where it becomes letters that are engraved. Bechukosai means engraved. Chakika. You know what Chakika means? It has the same root as the word Chakika, which means to engrave in stone. So here's what this means. There's a difference between written letters and engraved letters, right? What's the difference? When you take ink and you write it on parchment or on paper, so you're taking the ink, which is a separate entity, you're taking a paper, which is a second entity, and you're connecting the two, you're putting one on the other, and they become attached. Right? But you can always then scrape off the letters and erase them. They're not really one and the same. They're two entities that were united. When you engrave letters in stone, it's not two entities that you united. They became one and the same. And the Torah is hinting to us that if a Yid's going to learn Torah to the degree where him and the Torah become one entity, it's not two separate things. There's me and there's time I learn Torah, there's time I devote to the Torah. No, if your Torah will be with such a toil and such devotion that you and the Torah literally become one, then you will receive all these rewards. You follow? So if that's the case, we are hardly talking about simple people over here. This is not at all the lowest common denominator. You're talking about people who will toil in Torah, that's their whole occupation, to the degree where they and the Torah become one. It's like engraved letters, the Torah becomes engraved on their heart. This is a high level of spiritual attainment.
What about the
And
other?
to those such people, you're promising them goodies.
You
The question is
have the
even
same
greater.
question, right.
It's not only it's
It's
not the
even-
lowest
it's
common
even
denominator.
greater.
We tried to answer that it's the lowest common denominator, so you have to buy them off with some goodies. But here now with the rabbis tell that in Bechukosai G-d was talking about a very high level of dedication to Torah. Not just a dedication of you're learning, you make some time to learn. No, this is a person that's completely dedicated. He toils to the degree where it becomes one with him.
Doesn't that leave out all the other people?
Well, so first of all, it leaves everyone. So you can say that it's talking about both people.
Right.
But if it's talking about, you can say it's talking about simple people, but it's also talking about but if it's a high level people, why again are we talking about rain and produce and trees and fruits? Talk to them about heaven, paradise, angels, spirituality. Why are you talking to people that Torah became literally engraved on their heart? It became one with them. Such a unity that all of a sudden now you're going to buy them off with apples.
And once we come to this definition, how do we get back to the ordinary? How do we say that it applies to the ordinary?
It's a unified
So
message.
this is a question. That's exactly the question. Now, who are we talking to?
Right.
Why are we talking to? We try to answer that it's talking about the lowest common denominator. And for them, you need to inspire them with simple things till you can get the higher. But it's not really the case, because if you look into the words and the nuances of the words, you realize quickly that this is not talking about the lowest common denominator. It's talking about the highest common denominator.
It can be interpreted.
People
for
that
everyone.
the Torah has become one with them, Bechukosai G-d, it's engraved in them. It's a very different type of person. Again, then why is this person being bought off with simple things? Why are you talking to him about things that you would talk to a 5-year-old? It's understood the question. Right, so let's try to answer this. The Torah is called, it says about the Torah, Ki hu chayecha. The Torah is described in the verse that it is your life. The Torah is considered the life of a Jew. In other words, the Torah is not something that if you learn it, it brings you good life. As if it's some, separate thing from the Jew that happens to enhance his life. I mean, you have your life, and the Torah makes your life better. Ki hu chayecha, this, Moshe says, this is your life. Means that the Torah becomes the very life of the Jew, it becomes one with the Jew. Not a separate thing that you would bring into your life. That becomes your very life. Similar to a human being. We'll try to describe it in terms of the life as we can relate to it. Yeah? In a human's life, you have, the body is divided into 3 parts, right? You have your head, your body, and your feet, your legs. The torso and the legs, yeah? One higher than the other. The head is where the main human qualities rest, reside. The brain, the power of sight, the power of hearing, and so on and so forth. The higher levels of the human experience. Well, mainly the intellect. The second part of the body is where your emotions are, the heart, which is lower than the intellect. And the feet, the legs, are already a part of the human being that you don't really see the qualities of the human being in his legs. You see them in his mind, perhaps in his heart, in his emotions, but not in your legs. Right? Your legs are just there to take you where you need to go. Animals have legs too. So the human quality is not so much found. That means that in the head is a greater level of the human life force. In the emotions and the torso is a little less, and the feet is even less. But this is true only when you're talking about the detailed, in other words, the detailed parts of the human life force. What I mean by this is, our rabbis talk about the life of a human being, 2 types of life force. There's the detailed life force of the soul as it encloses itself in the body. And over there's different, it's compartmentalized. You have the power of sight, the power of intellect, the power of hearing, the power of speaking, the power of emotion, the power of walking and moving and acting and so on and so forth. Detailed. The power of sight can never enclose itself in your hand. It's not a match, it's not a glove. The power of the ear cannot be in the head, and so on and so forth. But that's only true when we're talking about the life of the soul as it's compartmentalized. It's already detailed. But then there's a certain life force of the human being, of the soul, that is equally found in every part of the human being. The essential life force. That which makes you live. The soul that makes you live, the essence of the life force of the human being is a soul. Right? That's the human being. And that part of the human being, the essence of the human being, is found in every single part of the human body equally. In the Hebrew vernacular, it's called chayus kloli, the general life force, and the chayus proti, the detailed life force. The detailed life force is more over here than here, even less over here. But the general life force, which is the essence of the human being's life force, is found everywhere, equally. Right? That means the closer you get to the essence of the life force, the more you'll find it everywhere. The higher it is in the higher the life force is, the more it penetrates throughout the entire human being, the entire human experience. Clear?
So the soul is equal in the feet and in the
Absolutely.
hands and the
The general essential life force of the soul is equally everywhere.
The body is a glove for the soul.
And equally everywhere.
Your toes are as alive as
Yeah.
your...
A person that's in a coma is alive.
Yeah.
He's just as alive as a person walking a robust. They're both alive. One is sick, the highest prati, the detailed life force is bad news. But the general life force is there. The toe is not more alive than the head, or less. And this is because the life force of the soul is the essence of the human being, and therefore it's found everywhere equally in the human being. The essence is found everywhere. Correct?
Not unique to human beings, though. An
No,
animal
I'm
would
just
have
saying
the same
you're
life
right.
force.
Yeah, you're right about that. Yeah, it's not unique to human beings. That's true. You see this when a person, when you see this, when a person is happy. Yeah, a person is happy. So only if he's only happy in his mind, and it doesn't penetrate everywhere, it's a sign that the happiness is limited. The more, if a person is happy to the point where it's coming from the essence of his life force, it's going to penetrate all the way down into his feet, and he's going to start dancing.
That's very interesting.
The more, the deeper it's rooted in your essence, the further it will penetrate down to the last levels of your experience, of your human experience. Correct? Okay. So now this will be applied in the experience of Torah and Mitzvahs and the rewards for Torah and Mitzvahs. When we talk about Torah and Mitzvahs, yeah, we try to articulate this properly. The Torah, the reward for Torah and Mitzvahs, right, that we were talking about before, is a natural consequence of the observance itself. It's a natural consequence of the observance. It's not two separate things.
The reward for a mitzvah is the mitzvah.
It's a natural consequence. It's not like you tell a kid, if you're going to learn well in school, I'll buy you chocolate. Buying the chocolate is not a natural consequence of the learning in school. It's just you're going to give him something he likes. When it comes to Torah mitzvahs, we're told that the very Torah mitzvah that you learn produce the reward for it.
Being itself.
Yeah, and more than just itself. Even the promises that we're told are a natural outcome of the Torah mitzvahs itself. There's a relationship between what you did and what you received. It's not two separate things. It's one leads to the other.
You're telling us that it's a causality. In other words,
Yeah.
the observance of Torah
effect,
causes you to have these things.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Well,
That's very interesting. Rather than something that's bestowed upon you as a consequence for observing them.
yeah.
It's
natural
a
incarnate
natural
in the thing
consequence,
itself
right.
that one
See-
thing leads to another. Yeah.
Right.
So just like if you do Torah mitzvahs and observe the statutes, like rain and fruit, just
Right. That's so here. Listen to
That's
this.
very good.
Listen to
I
this. Listen
just
to
caught
this.
that.
So now, like this, Torah. We talked about a Jew that learns Torah to the point where the Torah becomes one with him. It's engraved in him. There's no two separate entities. The Torah penetrates his whole existence. It became his life. So now, if the reward for your Torah mitzvahs is going to be only a spiritual reward in heaven or even today, that would be a sign that the Torah has penetrated only your spiritual parts of your human experience. But it hasn't quite penetrated down to the last detail of your life, even the physical things that you need. If the Torah in other words, when the Torah says of it, what was the question? You're talking to people that their life is on such a high level. Why are you promising them such goodies? Physical things. The answer to that is the proof that the Torah has penetrated every single aspect of this human being. It's not that he has two separate parts to him. There's my spiritual part that I dedicate to God and to the Torah and mitzvahs when I'm in shul. And then I have my golf. And I have my business and I have my vacations that have nothing to do with that. And we're saying over here, no. Over here we're talking about a Yid whose entire life became Torah. And therefore it penetrates even to the food that he eats. That becomes a natural consequence of his spiritual life, of his commitment to Hashem. And therefore when the Torah says, I'm going to reward you for your Torah with good fruit and good and peace and all the physical things that a human being does, that's a sign that we're talking about the highest common denominator. If the reward would only be a spiritual one, which is paradise, if that would be the emphasis, then it would be the type of Torah and mitzvahs that's not completely chakika, that's not engraved with you. There's two separate entities, my spiritual part, and therefore I'm getting spiritual reward, commensurate with my service. My spiritual side is dedicated, therefore God gives me a better spirituality, but my physical thing is disconnected. When the Torah says that if you learn Torah properly, you will be rewarded down to the last apple that you eat, that means that the Torah has penetrated every single aspect of human beings, nothing is outside of it. It's a natural consequence to your level of dedication. If your dedication is total and complete, then the reward will be total and complete.
It's like permeated into your
It permeates
feet.
every single
Into
aspect.
your feet,
Exactly.
the way you said before.
Into your fruit, to your eat, to your food, to your sleeping, to everything. That's why the Torah talks about everything will be part of that reward, because everything was part of the service. If the Torah if the reward is a natural consequence, a cause and effect, then when could we enjoy total reward, physical and spiritual? When the Torah has penetrated every aspect of us, the spiritual and the physical. So the question is no longer why are we talking about physical reward. The physical reward is a sign that the Torah that we are observing, that this human being, this Yid, is completely dedicated to every aspect of his life. And therefore every aspect of his life is being rewarded.
Rabbi,
You follow now?
why does it say also, and observe my commandments in addition to statutes? Is that the
Because
same?
the statutes of Torah, is what we just said before, that the one
And the
says
commandments are different,
observance of mitzvahs. Statute, the one says that you will walk in my statutes means you will learn Torah with great toil, to the point where it becomes one with your life.
And commandments.
As with the observance of mitzvahs, putting on tefillin and
Right.
eating
So
kosher.
they're both together.
They're both, the whole package. So he says, if you will observe Torah mitzvahs to that level, in other words, we asked before, you're talking to a person at such and such a high level, and you're giving him such low-level stuff. The Rabbi is saying over in this sikha that the low-level stuff is a sign that he's on a high level. In other words, that his Torah mitzvahs is engraved with him absolutely and completely, and that's why the natural consequence of such Torah mitzvahs that every aspect of him is being rewarded. His spiritual and his physical, down to the last lowest thing.
Was bringing out the emphasis
not
that he
negating-
still lives in this world.
No, he's not negating
You can't
the spiritual
scrape off. You can't
reward.
scrape off
He's
all.
not negating the spiritual reward. He's saying that the reward will be not only spiritual, but it will penetrate into every aspect of your life, because Torah penetrated into every aspect of your life. And therefore the reward is a natural consequence to such dedication. It will be every aspect of your life will be rewarded.
And it never goes away. It's always there like an engravement. You can't take it out.
No, on the contrary, that's a sign that it's engraved.
That's it.
Engraved means there's no two separate parts. My spiritual part is dedicated to Hashem, and then I have my time. Because when I eat, I'm a human being. When I daven, I'm a godly person. A Yid that serves Hashem that way is lacking. Bechukosai means that the Torah became literally one with him. This when I eat, I'm a Yid, and when I sleep, I'm a Jew. When I walk, I'm a Jew. When I'm on vacation, I'm a Jew. And when I learn, I'm a Jew. Everything is a Jew. It's penetrated every aspect of my being, and therefore the natural reward for that is it'll penetrate every aspect of your life too. So the reward will be not only the higher levels of your experience. You'll have a profound understanding of God. It will penetrate down to the last part of your experience. Your fruit will be different. Your everything will be different. And the same thing when Mashiach comes. The rabbis talk about the great reward when Mashiach comes, that candies will be growing on the trees. You ever heard that? What's the meaning of this? It's the same idea. The profound appreciation for Hashem will be so real that will permeate every aspect of our physical life and every aspect of the physical world, so that it'll penetrate everything, that the godliness will become one with the world, and therefore there will be no friction, and it won't take a year for something to grow. If God's life force is penetrating a tree, it's going to grow a cookie right away, or fruit right away. Why should it take a year? The reason now it takes a year is because godliness and the world are not one. So it takes time till it permeates, till it gives its fruit, till it produces a perfect fruit. But in that time when God is permeating the world with no limitations at all, without any obstacles, without any contractions, without any concealment, there's no friction. Right now there is friction. It takes a half a year for something to grow. Well, how does something grow? God makes it grow. So God can make it grow today. What's the problem? Why is it not growing immediately?
It's not one and the same.
Because there's a disconnection, there's a concealment, there's limitations. When the world will be perfect, when Mashiach will come, the fact that the rabbis emphasize the physical reward that will happen with the world will be such a wonderful place, is only a sign that the spiritual level is perfect, and that everything is in sync. Everything matches. There's no contradiction between God and the physical world. That's a sign that we're on the highest level, not on the lower level. It's not the lowest because the common denominator is the highest. And everyone will reach that level.
Now, this situation won't occur simply by the observance of commandments.
No.
It has to be
Toil and
The
Torah.
type of command of observance is with the Torah, and you become one. It becomes your very life.
Right. That's
Just like your neshama is the very life force of your body, and therefore penetrates every aspect down to the lowest toe. The same thing, godliness becomes your life, or the Torah becomes your life. It penetrates every single aspect of your life, even down to the apple that you eat.
But this has
But
to be.
observing the commandments is not enough.
No,
No,
you have to
no.
toil. You have to learn by toil and
Your
learn,
dedication.
and observe commandments. If you observe commandments alone without that, this won't happen. In other words, if you
Yes,
don't learn
if it's
Torah, you
just
just observe commandments.
In other words, learning Torah is not either 100% enough. A person that learns Torah and he observes commandments, but it's only his attitude is that the Torah is an important thing that I want to introduce into my life, and at certain
Still
times.
has bitterly, yes.
He's not total dedication to Torah. It doesn't become his. He's not
Still
one
yes.
with the Torah. You have to. It's an attitude thing. It's not how many hours a day you learn. It's nothing to do with that. Because a person has to go work. He has to produce. He has to live. It's the point of how do you see the Torah in your life? If it becomes chakika engraved in you that the Torah is one with me.
It should be the life.
That is my life. And therefore everything I do is within the context of Torah. It's a different kind of life. It's a different kind of dedication. That kind of dedication will produce a perfect reward in every aspect of your life, not just the spiritual.
If you haven't reached that level, what's
So you'll be rewarded, but it'll be much more limited.
limited?
Yeah.
Will not penetrate him. We're all going to reach this level. We'll all enjoy this one day. We'll all enjoy this one day.
By Mashiach.
Certainly when Mashiach comes. Yeah, when Mashiach comes, we'll enjoy this. But even today, we can, if we work at it, we can rejoice. It's a question of how do you see the Torah. You and Torah are not two separate things. Many of us have the attitude that the Torah is not my life. My life is my life, and then I have, then I have my dedication to Hashem. I put on tefillin. I have an hour a day that I go to synagogue, and then I go to my own life. Your own life is already a sign that it's not Bechukosai. It's not engraved. What do you mean? If the Torah is engraved in you, it's not two separate. Not written letters.
Engraved letter.
It's engraved letter. Engraved letters means it becomes one and the same. There is no two separate entities that you attach in certain moments. The letters go with you wherever you are. You can't separate them. So there's no part of your life that's separate from Hashem. That's separate from the Torah and from Hashem. That kind of Yiddishkeit, that kind of dedication, that kind of attitude will produce a reward which is a natural consequence of that will be that every aspect of your life will be permeated with godliness. Everything will be enhanced. So we're not talking about a person that needs to be bought off with something. You can see it that way. If we talk, it means, of course, we're talking to all Jew, but we're even talking about the highest level Jew. Why does a high level Jew need to be told that his fruit will be delicious? He doesn't need it. It's a natural consequence of the highest level of Torah, dedication to Torah. Because the Torah is one with you. It permeates you, it becomes one, that's your life. So every aspect of your life is going to be permeated with Torah. What you eat, how you sleep, your environment, everything. Why? There's nothing separate. It means if there's something that is not rewarded, it means that there's something that's not Torah-dik. If there's an aspect in your life that's not enhanced, it means that aspect in your life is not connected to Torah. If it was connected to Torah, the natural consequence is that it will be rewarded. It will be enhanced. So the fact that it's penetrated down to your foot, over here, that would mean it's penetrating down to your fruit and to your physical life, means that the Torah is one with you at every level. Comprende? Now you can go get busy.
Get a grave.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Enjoy.
Go.
Thank
And
you.
we should have appreciation for Hashem at that level. It would be wonderful. Mashiach would come quick.